In the quiet corners of ancient libraries, amidst the scent of crumbling vellum and aged leather, there exists a secret conversation that has been whispering for centuries. It is not written in the common tongues of Latin or Old French, nor is it carved in runes or cuneiform. It is a language of image and intention, a visual poetry etched in vermilion and gold, hidden within the pages of manuscripts that promise the transformation of lead into gold and the secret to eternal life. To the uninitiated, these texts are mere curiosities, the fanciful delusions of a pre-scientific age. But to lean closer, to allow the eye to soften and the mind to open, is to perceive the faint outlines of a different kind of map altogether, a cartography not of geography, but of the human soul. This is the lost language of alchemical symbols, a cryptic lexicon where the practical and the profound, the earthly and the cosmic, are fused into a single dazzling unity, a visual key intended to unlock the deepest mysteries of existence itself. Imagine, if you will, a world not yet fractured by the rigid dichotomies of science and spirit, a world where every substance, every process observed in the natural world was understood to be an outer manifestation of an inner spiritual truth. The alchemist, standing at his furnace, was not merely a primitive chemist, he was a philosopher, an artist, and a mystic, engaged in a grand, participatory dialogue with the universe. The symbols he employed, the serpent eating its own tail, the radiant sun conjoined with the reflective moon, the majestic phoenix rising from its ashes, were never meant to be taken merely at face value. They were a deliberate code, a necessary veil drawn across profound and dangerous truths. In an age where unorthodox thought could lead to persecution, the language of symbols provided a sanctuary for inquiry, allowing the seeker to record and transmit insights that words alone could not contain, insights that spoke of a fundamental unity underlying all of creation's dazzling diversity. To decode this language, then, is to embark on a journey far more significant than a historical or academic exercise. It is to learn to see the world through the eyes of those who perceive the cosmos as a living, breathing entity, imbued with meaning and purpose. The alchemist's laboratory was a microcosm of the macrocosm. The changes he witnessed in his retorts and alembics, dissolution, purification, coagulation, were mirrors of the processes required for inner transformation. The base metal was not just lead, but the unrefined self, burdened by ignorance and desire. The philosopher's stone was not merely a physical catalyst, but the illuminated consciousness, the perfected state of being that could touch the divine and transform all it contacted. The symbols are the bridges between these two realms, each one a dense packet of meaning, a single note in a symphony of correspondences that connects the mineral in the earth to the starlight in the heavens and the longing in the human heart. This exploration, therefore, is an invitation to remember a forgotten way of knowing. It is a call to look beyond the superficial interpretation of the quest for gold and to perceive the deeper, more enduring gold of spiritual awakening. The symbols are our guides on this path, strange and beautiful landmarks in an internal wilderness. They ask us to consider that the greatest transformations are not those achieved in the crucible, but those wrought in the silent furnace of introspection. They suggest that the true secret being guarded was not a formula for wealth, but a manual for becoming. As we begin to decipher these arcane sigils, we are not simply translating an antique code. We are relearning a native language of the soul, one that speaks of integration, wholeness, and the sacred fire that seeks to refine all things towards their most perfect and essential state. This is the hidden architecture of reality, as seen through the eyes of the adept, and it awaits only our renewed attention to begin its revelation once more. Of course, let us delve deeper into the heart of this arcane lexicon to trace the fundamental currents that give this silent language its power and coherence. The symbols of alchemy are not random inventions. They are the flowering of a distinct worldview, a set of core convictions about the nature of reality that provides the fertile soil from which this unique visual grammar grows. To understand the symbols, one must first apprehend the philosophical pillars upon which the entire art was built, principles that whisper of a universe far more interconnected and intelligent than it often appears to the modern fragmented mind. These are not mere concepts to be learned, but living truths to be felt, patterns that resonate from the galactic down to the granular, and most importantly, within the very fabric of our own consciousness. At the very foundation lies the principle of correspondence, most famously encapsulated in the axiom, as above, so below, as below, so above. This is the master key to the alchemical world. It posits a universe of mirrors, a profound and unbroken resonance between the macrocosm, the vast star-strewn cosmos, and the microcosm, the human being. The alchemist did not see himself as separate from his work. His laboratory was his own body and soul reflected in glass and metal. The processes of the heavens, the cycles of the planets, the dance of the elements were all understood to be occurring within him. A symbol like the zodiac was not just an astrological chart. It was a map of the inner heavens, a guide to the different energies and potentialities active within the human spirit. The 7 classical metals were not merely substances. They were the corporeal expressions of the 7 planetary intelligences, each with its own spiritual signature. Thus, to work with lead, Saturn's metal, was to engage with the principles of time, limitation, and gravity, both in the crucible and in one's own life. The symbol in this light becomes a point of convergence, a single glyph that simultaneously signifies a celestial body, a metal, a part of the body, and a state of the soul. Flowing directly from this is the central theme of transformation, the magnum opus or great work. Alchemy is the art of change, but it is change guided by a divine telos, a belief that all matter, all spirit, is yearning towards a state of perfection. The base metal desires to become gold, just as the base soul aspires to enlightenment. This process was never seen as a violent imposition of will, but as a gentle midwifery, an assistance offered to nature to help it achieve its own highest aim more quickly. The symbols chart this journey with meticulous care. The negredo, represented by a crow, a skull, or putrefaction, signifies the essential first stage of dissolution, the dark night of the soul where all false structures and identities must break down. The albedo, often shown as a swan, a white rose, or a bathing figure, is the washing clean, the purification that follows this breakdown, a state of clarity and humility. The citronitis, or yellowing, and finally the rubedo, the reddening, symbolized by the phoenix, the royal marriage of sun and moon, or the Rebis, the two-headed hermaphrodite, represent the integration of opposites and the emergence of the perfected, fully actualized self. These are not sequential steps in a recipe, but overlapping cyclical phases of a transformative ordeal, each with its own symbolic landscape. Underpinning this entire transformative journey is the dynamic interplay of opposites and their ultimate reconciliation. The alchemical universe is a tapestry woven from dualities, masculine and feminine, active and passive, volatile and fixed, soul and spirit, sun and moon. The symbol for this is perhaps the most iconic, the conjunction of Sol and Luna. This is not a simple union, but a chemical wedding, a sacred hieros gamos where opposing forces cease their conflict and merge to give birth to something entirely new, the divine child, the philosopher's stone. This is the alchemical answer to the problem of discord, the secret to turning poison into medicine. The serpent Ouroboros, devouring its own tail, is another potent symbol of this unity, representing the cyclic nature of a process where the end and the beginning are one, where the opposing forces are contained within a single, self-sustaining entity. The work of the alchemist was to hold the tension of these opposites within his own being, his reason and his intuition, his aggression and his compassion, until they transcended their polarity and revealed their underlying harmony. The symbols, therefore, are not static images. They are snapshots of a dynamic process, frozen moments of reconciliation that guide the seeker toward inner wholeness. Let us then venture further into the labyrinth, beyond the foundational pillars and into the rich, narrative heart of the alchemical mystery. For the language of symbols is not a dry taxonomy. It is an epic poem written in fire, water, earth, and air. A series of allegorical dramas that unfold simultaneously in the retort, the cosmos, and the soul. These deeper narratives are where the abstract principles take on life, donning the masks of kings and queens, dragons and eagles, playing out the eternal story of death and rebirth on a stage that exists within the heart of every seeker. To read these stories is to engage in an act of active imagination, to allow the symbols to bypass the intellect and speak directly to the unconscious, where their true transformative power resides. Consider the poignant and universal drama of the king and queen, Sol and Luna. This is far more than a simple allegory for chemical marriage. It is a profound exploration of the psyche's inner duality. The king, Sol, is often depicted as a radiant, crowned sun, representing the conscious mind, active principle, logic, and the driving, purposeful will. He is spirit, the animating fire. The queen, Luna, is the moon, a crowned woman often associated with water, silver, and the mirror. She represents the unconscious, the receptive principle, intuition, the soul, and the deep, nurturing waters of emotion. In their separated state, they are incomplete. The king's fiery will burns without direction or depth, while the queen's reflective waters remain stagnant, lacking the energy for manifestation. The narrative of their courtship, their dissolution in the acid of Mercurius, the mediating principle, their death, and their glorious resurrection as the Rebis, a single androgynous being with two heads holding the sun and moon, is the entire opus in miniature. It is the story of the conscious ego humbling itself to descend into the chaotic, creative waters of the unconscious, and the unconscious rising to be illuminated by the light of consciousness. Their union births a new, transcendent consciousness that is neither solely rational nor solely intuitive, but a harmonious integration of both, the true philosopher's stone of the self. Another powerful narrative is the relentless, cyclic struggle with the dragon. This fearsome creature, often winged and breathing fire, represents the primal, chaotic, and undifferentiated state of matter, the materia prima itself, full of potential but also of danger. It is the volatile, passionate, and often destructive energy of the untamed psyche, the shadow self with all its raw instincts and fears. In many illustrations, the alchemist or a knight is shown battling this dragon, a symbol of the necessary struggle to confront and integrate one's own darkness. But the deeper secret, revealed in other images, is that the dragon is not to be slain outright. Its blood is the coveted solvent, its body the very substance of the work. The dragon is also the Ouroboros, the serpent of eternity that contains the cycle of life and death within itself. This narrative teaches that our deepest challenges, our most chaotic and frightening energies, are not enemies to be vanquished, but are, in fact, the very raw material of our transformation. The fire of the dragon is the same fire that fuels the alchemical furnace. One must learn to harness it, not extinguish it. The integration of this fierce, primal power is what gives the nascent stone its potency and permanence. Then there is the sublime and sorrowful allegory of the green lion devouring the sun. This startling image depicts a vibrant, emerald-hued lion consuming the golden solar disk. On a material level, it refers to a specific chemical process, perhaps the action of aqua regia, a mixture of acids dissolving gold. But its symbolic resonance is vast and terrifyingly beautiful. The green lion represents the corrosive, dissolving power of the unconscious, the raw, vegetative force of nature that consumes the individual ego, the sun. It is a symbol of the nigredo, that essential devastating stage of the work where all one's preconceived notions, pride, and rigid structures of identity are utterly broken down. It is the painful, necessary process of humiliation and deconstruction that must precede any genuine renewal. The sun, the prized gold of the conscious personality, must be willingly sacrificed, devoured by this primal force, so that its essence can be extracted and later resurrected in a more perfect, incorruptible form. This narrative is a profound lesson in surrender, teaching that true growth often feels like annihilation, and that we must sometimes allow our most cherished certainties to be consumed by the green, growing, and utterly impersonal forces of the soul's own deepest nature in order to be remade. Indeed, the grandeur of these cosmic narratives and symbolic struggles can feel vast, even distant, like constellations observed from a solitary shore. Yet, the true genius of the alchemical language lies precisely in its earthly application. Its silent insistence that these celestial dramas are not played out in some far-off realm, but are the very substance of our daily existence. The laboratory was always a metaphor, the furnace a mirror. To integrate this wisdom is not to don a robe and seek a physical stone, but to recognize that the raw materials for the magnum opus are present in every moment of conflict, every spark of inspiration, every instance of decay and renewal that defines a human life. The real-world implication of decoding this lost language is the recovery of a transformative lens through which to view our own psychology, our creativity, and our place within the living world. Consider the practical art of navigating personal crisis through the lens of the Negredo. In our modern paradigm, the descent into darkness, be it through grief, failure, depression, or the dissolution of a long-held identity, is pathologized, medicated, and rushed through. We speak of avoiding burnout and managing stress, treating the symptoms without understanding the process. The alchemical framework offers a radical reinterpretation. This is not a malfunction, but a necessary stage of the work. The putrefaction, the blackening, the feeling of being devoured by the green lion is the first essential step toward any genuine transformation. By understanding this as a phase with purpose, we can learn to sit within the darkness without panic, to allow the old structures to break down without immediately scrambling to rebuild them on the same shaky foundation. This is not passive resignation, but an active, courageous participation in one's own dissolution, trusting, as the alchemists did, that from this black earth the new life of the albedo will eventually emerge, purified and stronger. The symbol of the crow or the skull becomes a personal sigil, a reminder that decay is the prerequisite for fertility. Similarly, the concept of solve et coagula, dissolve and coagulate, provides a profound methodology for creativity and problem solving. Our linear minds seek to build, to add, to assemble. The alchemical mind understands that first, one must break down. A creative block, a stubborn intellectual puzzle, a relational impasse. These are often not solved by applying more force, but by applying the solvent of introspection, of questioning assumptions, of allowing the problem to dissolve back into its constituent parts. This is the solve, the analytical breakdown, the opening to chaos and possibility. Only then can the coagula occur, the reintegration of those elements into a new, more elegant and harmonious whole. The artist does not simply paint. She first dissolves her subject into shapes of light and color before coagulating them back onto the canvas in a new form. The engineer must dissolve the failed design before the innovative solution can coalesce. This rhythmic pulse of dissolution and integration, of breaking apart and bringing together, is a practical cadence for navigating a complex world, a way of working with the inherent flux of life rather than resisting it. Furthermore, the ultimate goal of the work, the creation of the Rebis, the reconciled whole, offers a powerful model for psychological integration in an age of fragmentation. We are constantly tempted to identify with fragments of ourselves, our professional persona, our curated social self, our private anxieties. The alchemical pursuit is the antithesis of this. It is the diligent work of gathering all these scattered and often opposing parts, the solar will and the lunar intuition, the kingly discipline and the queenly compassion, the golden virtue and the leaden shadow, and facilitating their sacred marriage within the vessel of the self. The real-world implication is a move toward inner sovereignty and authenticity. It is the practice of acknowledging one's anger without being consumed by it, harnessing the dragon's fire, of honoring one's vulnerability without being defined by it, valuing the queen's water, and ultimately of forging a personality that is fluid yet coherent, capable of holding complexity without fracturing. The philosopher's stone, in this light, is not an external trophy, but the attainment of a resilient and integrated self, a state of being where one can touch the lead of hardship and transmute it, through perspective and wisdom, into the gold of meaning. And so we arrive at the final crucible, the point of coagulation where the insights gathered must now be fused into a single enduring understanding. This journey through the lost language of alchemy has never been a mere archaeological dig into the curiosities of the past. It has been a reconnaissance mission into the depths of the present self, a mapping of the internal territories that these ancient artists charted with such exquisite care. The symbols were their stars, their compass points in the vast and often terrifying ocean of becoming. To have decoded them is not to have completed a task, but to have been handed the tools for a lifelong work. The conclusion of this exploration, therefore, is not an end, but an invocation, a call to remember the gold that sleeps within the lead of our ordinary moments, and to take up the mantle of the modern adept, whose laboratory is the entirety of a conscious life. The transformational call embedded in this secret language is a summons to active participation in the great work of your own existence. It is an invitation to stop perceiving your life as a series of random happenings and to begin to see it as a coherent, symbolic narrative, a personalized alchemical text being written in the choices of every day. The irritations, the joys, the periods of stagnation, and the flashes of insight are no longer merely emotional weather. They are the ingredients in your flask, the prima materia awaiting your intentional engagement. The call is to become the alchemist of your own experience, to learn the art of applying the gentle heat of attention to your struggles, to learn when to dissolve a hardened attitude with the solvent of compassion, and when to coagulate a fleeting inspiration into tangible action. This is the practical mysticism bequeathed to us, a philosophy that does not retreat from the world but engages with it more deeply, knowing that the mundane is the very stuff of the sacred, and that the path to the stars is paved with the stones of the earthly path. This is ultimately a call to embrace the unity that the symbols tirelessly point toward. The Rebis, the united king and queen, the reconciled sun and moon, stands as the ultimate testament to this. That wholeness, not perfection, is the goal. We are called to end the civil war within, to cease exiling parts of ourselves into the shadows, and to instead welcome them all to the chemical wedding. Your fear, your creativity, your logic, your intuition, your strength, your fragility, these are not enemies, but the essential opposites, whose sacred union births a consciousness that is truly resilient, creative, and free. The philosopher's stone you seek is the realization of this indivisible self, a state of being where you are no longer at the mercy of external events because you possess the internal gold of self-awareness and integration. This stone does not grant eternal life in a literal sense, but it does bestow a timeless quality upon your existence, an ability to find meaning in all seasons, to transmute suffering into wisdom, and to recognize that the entire cosmic dance is happening within you and you within it. Let this understanding be the catalyst for a quiet but profound revolution in your perception. Carry the emblems of the Ouroboros and the phoenix within you not as historical relics, but as living emblems of the cyclic nature of growth and the promise of renewal that follows every ending. See the green lion not as a monster to be feared, but as the necessary force of dissolution that clears the ground for new growth. Approach your own periods of blackness, not with despair, but with the solemn curiosity of an adept who knows that this too is part of the recipe. The lost language is found the moment you choose to speak it with your life, the moment you look upon your world and see not inert matter, but a living, symbolic text brimming with meaning. The secret was never hidden in a book. It was always hidden in the act of seeing. The transformation begins now, not in a distant tower, but here, in the humble laboratory of the next breath you take, the next choice you make, in the silent, steadfast commitment to turn the base metal of the everyday into the gold of a life truly, fully, and consciously lived.